cutbacks we're all making as the cost of living crisis bites. The figures are stark and paint a grim reality for millions. Despite this, government says there'll be no financial help until a new PM is in place. Also tonight,
the evening news with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. Tonight, just a day after Britain's struggling households were bombarded by a barrage of gloomy economic news, the reality was laid bare of just how deep the cost of living crisis is biting into people's lives, a reality it seems they're going to have to face on their own. According to the Office for National Statistics, more than 40% of people in the poorest areas are already cutting back on food and other essentials, and over half the population is using less gas and electricity. But the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, admitted it'll likely be more than a month before any government action. More from our political reporter, Shihab Khan. Well, video emerged today of Rishi Sunak appearing to boast about working to divert funds away from deprived urban areas. The former Chancellor has been enveloped in controversy after making the remarks to a grassroots party gathering in a prosperous part of southeast England. Our reporter Phil Hornby is in Eastbourne for us tonight, where Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss are preparing for another hustings debate. And Phil, not the ideal build-up for Rishi Sunak. What's the reaction been? In the last few minutes, 3 senior judges have denied a legal application by Archie Batterby's family over whether he can be moved to a hospice to die. Well, earlier, a similar request to the High Court was also rejected. In a rare judgment today, 10 teenagers were given life sentences for the mob murder of a young man walking home from a fair. 18-year-old Jack Woodley was stabbed to death after being surrounded by a gang of youths. His mother told ITV News she wasn't even allowed to hold her dying son's hand because his body was evidence. Greg Eastall reports. Workers at the UK's biggest container port, Felixstowe, will go on strike for 8 days later this month over pay. As parts of Britain suffering from the prolonged spell of hot, dry weather began today to introduce hosepipe bans, people are being urged to snitch on their neighbours if they break the rules. Well, fines of up to £1,000 could be imposed for illicit water use. This afternoon, hosepipe bans came into force across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, joining the Isle of Man, which imposed a ban last week. In Kent and Sussex, similar measures come in from the 12th of August, while in Pembrokeshire, curbs start on the and Thames Water covering 15 million people, so they could introduce a ban too. Tonight, more places are closely watching their water supplies. Martin Stew has the details. There's plenty more to come on the ITV Evening News, including, we'll see for that and more the other side of the break. Welcome back. ITV News can exclusively reveal tonight that councils across England are asking the government to delay implementing its flagship social care reforms. Members of the local government association say there's not enough funding or personnel to deal with the changes. One survey of social care directors said 600 people a day are joining a rapidly growing list of those just waiting for an assessment, as our deputy political editor Anushka Rastana reports. Police have named 4 Vietnamese nationals whose remains were found in a burnt-out mill building in Oldham. It's believed the men were in the mill when it caught fire in May, though their bodies were only discovered last month. Emma Sweeney is in Oldham for us tonight. Emma, what more can you tell us? At least 8 Palestinians, including children, have been killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. Tourists are flocking to an erupting volcano in Iceland to witness its dramatic display, but the authorities there are pleading with people to stay away, saying getting too close could pose a serious risk to health. Yasmin Bobbleby has more. And if you like that story, there's more on our website. That's itv.com/news, of course. Well, you're watching the ITV Evening News, and here's what's still ahead before Emmerdale. But next tonight, your chance to put your questions to our experts on a range of current topics. It's called Ask ITV News. And tonight, our economics editor, Joel Hills, joins us to respond to your concerns of recession, inflation, energy price caps, all these things that we're hearing about. But it's a practical impact on people that really counts and why people are worried.
The big so deep and protracted that actually...
Worrying times for a lot of people. As a result, we've had a lot of people from Olivia in Sale.
Well, history tells us that jailed there by lockdown savings, rate hits 3% next year, local standards. Much of what happens next will, I think, probably depend on what happens to unemployment, when people tend to lose their homes, when they lose their jobs. When people lose their jobs, banks tend to get jittery about lending.
Yeah, all right, Joel, next question. This one comes from David, who's in Canterbury.
Interest rates will take money out of the... But it's absolutely ruinous for those on the lowest incomes, because taxes to help. They'll also be under huge pressure to spend much more money for households that are struggling this winter. The National Institute for Economic and Social Research thinks that 1.2 million households will...
Next question now from Bashir, who is in South London.
The short answer is they won't. Downturns, pump prices can absolutely collapse.
Question now. This one is from Jenny in Stockport.
Many other countries sent. The big problem in the United States is...
For some quick fire questions now, Joel. First up, this is from Steph from Liverpool. Why has the Bank of England increased interest rates and what does this mean for inflation?
That is a real... starting to ask for above inflation, high...
This one, Hannah in Hampshire. This is a good one. I'm a primary teacher. How can I explain interest rate rises and their impact to my pupils?
You take is a loan, you borrow it, the money...
Not just clear for Hannah's pupils, but for me as well. Thank you, as ever, Joel. Right, let's get an update on what is making the news tonight. China today stepped up its furious response to the visit to Taiwan by a senior American government figure. Immediately after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit, China began a huge military exercise off Taiwan's coast. Now, Beijing has suspended all dialogue between the two countries, including on climate change. A shock jock conspiracy theorist has been ordered to pay over $4 million in damages to the family of a child who died in the Sandy Hook school shooting. Alex Jones used his fame as a far-right radio host to peddle repeated claims that the atrocity in Connecticut in 2012 was a hoax perpetrated by gun control supporters. As Ben Chapman reports from Washington, he could soon face a far bigger bill. A former BBC radio presenter was warned today he could face jail after being found guilty of stalking a number of broadcasters, including the TV and radio presenter Jeremy Vine. Well, Mr. Vine described his ordeal at the hands of Alex Belfield as like being hit by an avalanche of hatred. Well, Mark McQuillan is outside the BBC's new broadcasting house for us this evening. Mark, what did the court hear? A few problems there with Mark. We'll hopefully try and get back to him a bit later in the programme. But for now, some other news. And Loose Women star Kay Adams and BBC Radio 2's Richie Anderson will join the Strictly Come Dancing celebrity lineup. It's been announced. The veteran football commentator Martin Tyler was forced to apologise today after appearing to link the Hillsborough disaster with hooligan-related issues. He made the remark on BBC Radio while being interviewed about the Premier League's 30th anniversary. He said he hadn't intended to make any such link. Sangeeta Lal reports. Well, as we heard, Martin Tyler will be commentating on tonight's opening match of the Premier League season with Crystal Palace hosting Arsenal. Amy Lewis is at Selhurst Park for us this evening. Amy, after the glories of England women's last weekend, a lot of anticipation ahead of this match. And from sport to some Friday showbiz. You will not want to miss it. All that after the break. Hello again. Now, for millions of their fans, the boy band Westlife was all that mattered across much of the first decade of this century. Many were inconsolable when the group disbanded back in 2012, but now, 4 years after reforming, Westlife are preparing for their biggest gig of all. Boys they may no longer be, but there's no disguising the band's excitement at their first Wembley Stadium concert tomorrow. Rishi Davda went to meet them. A giant mechanical bull, which has been the unexpected star of this year's Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, is set to stay in the city for good. Well, in sport, there was more success in the diving for England at the Commonwealth Games today. Finally, the sports stars and the giant bull are not the only stars of the Commonwealth Games. There's another unexpected set of stars too. The group of volunteers who rake the sand on the beach volleyball courts have become a massive online hit. Ellie Pitt explains. Oh, their own medals, their own show, more like. That is it for now. Raggy is back with news at 10, but from me and all the evening news team, bye-bye. And of course, have a great weekend.